Thank you very much, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that background. With us to discuss this issue, we would like to welcome Mr. Oluwole Usaze-Uzi, a lawyer and former Director of Publicity and Voter Education of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Mr. Usaze-Uzi, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Retirement looks good on you, huh?
Well, I retired from public service, but
right.
I'm still active in my chosen profession, legal profession.
Absolutely, that's great.
Thank you.
Nice having you again in our studios. Okay, also here with us is a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reform and convener Say No Campaign Nigeria. Ezenwa, delight to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Okay. And also here with us in the Abuja studios is Sefia Bichi Akusin. She's Head Knowledge Management and Learning of Yaga Africa. Sefia, pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right, now joining us from our Kaduna studio is a professor of governance, Department of Local Government and Development Studies, Faculty of Administration, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria. It's a pleasure to be on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Great. Via Zoom is the chairman, Kano State Independent Electoral Commission, Professor Garba Ibrahim Sheka. Professor Sheka, it's good to have you join us again this morning for this conversation.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
All right. Once again, we welcome all our guests. The fundamental assumption is that, in general, there may be a few exceptions. State independent electoral commissions have performed rather suboptimally in the conduct of local government elections, at least since the advent of the Fourth Republic in 1999. Ezenwa Nwagu, of course, who's here with us in the studios, is a veteran of monitoring the number of elections, both at the national level, conducted by INEC, and also at the state level, conducted by the respective state independent electoral commissions. Beginning with you, therefore, Ezenwa Nwagu, what accounts for the suboptimality of the performance of state independent electoral commissions, such that, we virtually do not have local governance at the that tier of government?
Thank you. I think first it has to do with generally our attitude to subnational governance, not necessarily our attitude to subnational governance. We put a lot of attention, a lot of investment in ensuring that national government is we watch them, we hold them accountable, and it has something to do with that which is far. It's more convenient to engage that which is far. Whether it's budget, you hear us talk about national budget when the federal budget is passed, but even as educated people, we care less about state budgets, we care less about local government budgets. So that attitude has also permeated into our engagement with elections at that level. And so whether as civil society, whether as media, our attention to elections at that level has been carefree. We are not interested, we don't want to know. And so the governors, starting from even the appointments, we're interested in who becomes what in INEC. We want to know, hold them accountable, but we don't care about who is appointed into the state independent electoral commission. We don't profile them, we don't check their background, we don't even know whether their capacity and competence in engaging and standing for even what. So it is a challenge for us as a people that we do not pay attention to that which really matters in terms of day-to-day engagement with the things that matters for us, which is local governance. So that for me has accounted for in across the country. It has you were magnanimous in saying with exceptions across the country, everywhere local government elections has been conducted, the governors have taken everything in most cases, Oyo just considered one, and that's really remarkable. In other places, they don't consider anything; they take everything, and it has implication for, how people engage with elections. So we have this attitude of giving. We give him power. We give him, and in democracy, democracy does not contemplate giving. It's a contestation, and so if there's a contestation, it is difficult for anybody to understand why you would sweep everything in a place where there's a true contest. So we need to put more searchlight on local governance, subnational governance, generally, not just local government elections.
All right, just as Kingsley noted, earlier on, that since the Fourth Republic, Nigeria has not experienced a formidable local government election as it should be. And I want to bring in the man who is in the saddle in Kano State, Professor Sheka. Professor Sheka, where did the nation get it wrong with respect to State Independent Electoral Commission, both in its structure, its responsibility, and control by governors of the state? Give us an idea of what Kano State Independent Electoral Commission, give us what is the outlook of Kano State Independent Electoral Commission, and how do you carry out your responsibility? Because you are in the saddle, and Nigerians would like to know really whether we have really failed and whether it is working elsewhere, like in Kano State.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss independent electoral commissions, state independent electoral commission at this forum. First of all, as we know, the state independent electoral commission were established by Section 3 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. And our responsibility is to organize and supervise local government elections and also render advice to INEC with regards to compilation of voters register. And of course, the major issues that we have been hearing all around is that state chairmen are being appointed by the state governors, and governors do interfere in the affairs of state, or elections are manipulated in favor of the state ruling parties. And that is why almost everywhere as state, the ruling party clears almost all the seats. So, like you also rightly pointed, there are some exceptions. Now, certainly, right from the constitutional provision, there was a problem, and God so kind now, the National Assembly is about reviewing the Constitution. The Constitution made it in block. It wasn't very.
Well, it does appear that we have lost the connection there to Kano, where Professor Sheka was about to give us his opening salvo. So we are back here in the studio. And let's bring in Oluwole Osaze Uzi, former Director of Publicity and Voter Education, National Independent Electoral Commission here in Abuja. Now, the issue is the fact that the state independent electoral commissions are appointed. The staff of that commission is usually appointed by the governor. And when elections are organized at the state level, the party in power in that state clears the seat. Well, we've just had that Oyo State considered one seat, but it has never happened elsewhere since 1999 that we returned to democratic governance in this country. Now, as someone who has worked at the National Independent Electoral Commission, what would be your view with respect to how state independent electoral commissions should be structured in terms of appointment, and of course, how should they carry out their electoral responsibilities?
Well, thank you very much. Factually speaking, I don't think Oyo was unique, actually. I don't think Oyo is the first state where the opposition party, as it were, has has managed to win a chairmanship seat. I think there are a couple of examples. I think but the fact remains that overwhelmingly, the party in power at the state level usually clears, in some cases, 100%. But there have been one or two exceptions. Not serious inroads, but yes, so the point is made. People forget that CX are appointed almost in exactly the same way as INEC officials are appointed. The staff are staff of the commission. They're not appointed by the state governor. The political appointees, the chairman and members of SEC, I think the constitution says minimum 5, maximum 7 members, are actually appointed by the governor following a process similar, akin to the process by which the president appoints the chairman and national commissioners and recs of INEC. So the proposal is made, the state governor goes and submits the name to the State House of Assembly, and the House of Assembly has to confirm, which is almost in pari material with the national body. The difference being that in this case of INEC, the Council of State has a role to play, not a significant role in terms of just an advisory. In consultation, the president has to consult the Council of State before sending the names to the Senate for confirmation. So structurally speaking, they're basically the same thing. I was very interested in hearing what the chairman of the Kano SIEC has to say about constitutional reform. I personally don't think there's any significant difference in the legal structure in terms of framework for appointment, framework for conduct of elections. But it's important to note that the quality of persons appointed is of great significance. I really don't know what the problem is. We've had, for example, I think the chairman of the Akwa Ibom State Independent Electoral Commission was a former resident electoral commissioner of INEC. So has experience in terms of conduct of management and conduct of elections. We've had retired judges, chief judges and things like that, heading State Independent Electoral Commission. Lagos State has a retired chief judge of Lagos State. You'll expect people of such stature to conduct elections in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. So it's not so much the mode of appointment, it's not so much the legal framework. Caliber of people might have a lot to do with it. I don't know where the problem actually comes from. But I think Ezenwa hit it right on the head when he said that it's our attitude to elections and governance generally at that lower level. Most of us, the elite, don't know who our councillor is. We don't know who our local government chairman is. And that's a problem. There must be more interest and more focus, because democracy is all about the grassroots. It's all about power growing from the grassroots, from the component part, the smallest component part, which is the councillor, and then go up to local government. Before we start talking of, maybe because of the imperial presidency we've had over the years, and the power of the presidency, power at the national level, we tend to concentrate a lot more on things happening there. So when there's no scrutiny, there's no light thrown into what's happening at those base levels, then the tendency is that people there get away with so much of the things that happen.
Okay, thank you very much, Osaze. But let's go over to our Kaduna studios, where Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa is. I mean, he's, of course, our regular expert on local government matters. Well, I would like to get your views on why state independent electoral commissions have posted, in general, again, such dismal performance since the Fourth Republic, to such an extent that you may very well delete independent from their names, and then they still just be state electoral commissions, making returns of candidates so handpicked, as the allegation goes, by the state chief executive. Why are we having this situation?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirian. I think we need to have a context and a better appreciation of this situation. It is not very peculiar to the Fourth Republic. All through our democratic experience, especially starting from 1979, you know, there was a great reform to the local government system in 1976, and that reform translated into the 1979 Constitution. And also, you must appreciate that the 1979 Constitution is similar to the 1999 Constitution. So experiences are bound to reflect from 79 to 1982, and then from 1999 to date. If you look, most transition to civil rule in the past, from military to civilian administration, often start with the local government level. And this has placed local government in a prime of place in terms of politicking in Nigeria. And so local government have come to occupy a very significant place in political mapping and political strategizing and politicking in Nigeria. If a governor wants to have control of his state, he must have total control of the local government in his state. And likewise, the thinking is that if a president wants to have complete control and understanding of what the nuances of politics in his country, in Nigeria, he must have control of the state. So it flows in that direction. However, over the years and long years of military authoritarian rule has changed the culture, the political culture of Nigeria, towards hierarchical control rather than greater participation and greater, processes of involvement and engagement of citizenry. So over the years, military dictatorship and authoritarian rule has also left certain empathy and apathy in the Nigerians, and people don't value the political process except only at the national level, And so what we see today is a reflection of certain long years of decay within the system, and it will take a long time and a long process of acculturization. And so what we are experiencing today is voter apathy, which has built up over time and is reflected, again, I'll continue to say, in our level of insecurity in society, because the space of participation in politics is shrunk to certain level. No participation at local government level, at the state level, no autonomy for legislature, no autonomy for judiciary. So power is concentrated and centralized at certain few level, at the state level, and at the federal level, the same thing is obtainable. And it is within this prism that you explain and understand the context of state electoral, independent electoral commission. Governors want to, because of the absence or near absence or decadence or decay in our political culture, governors take control of the state. But it's not only governors. The ruling party and the party hierarchy also want to display arrogance, political arrogance, that we are the ruling party and we must, a winner takes all, attitude goes into the process of politics. And so this is what is obtainable, that you find in a state, the local governments go, all the elections that, if any, if the elections takes place, because from 2003 to 2005, there were virtually no elections in the local government level, all across the federation. What you had in place for well over about 90% of the state was caretaker committee, interim management committee, sole administrator, and so on and so forth. And so the space at that level was emasculated and shrunk. Democratic participation was emasculated at that point and at that level. And so you find out that democracy and participation, involvement of citizens, at that level was near absence. And so what you have were people always looking up at the national level and everybody moving towards the national level. And it affects minority engagement in politics. And that is why this is within the context you would even appreciate minority agitation today in Nigerian politics. Because at that level of governance, there's virtually no governance, no decision-making involving people. And therefore, you will have an ungoverned space at that level, because everything is at the level of the state and at the level of the federal level or at national government level. And so the democratic space at that level is shrunk. And so you will find actors behaving like not Democrat. You have political elites that are not Democrat. So you have ruling elite determining what is obtainable at the local government level. So you find out that even the Electoral Commission, no matter the character of people you put in place, the culture for politics and democratic values are near absent at that level. And it's very incisive to also point to Nigerians that local government existed long before what you call state government and national government today, in the nature that we understand it. That is moving from colonial governance to independent governance. So the local government existed long before. Even when colonialists came, they met our societies with some form of governance at local level. People participated. So colonialism destroyed what we call, community governance. And when we gained independence, we did not consolidate or reverse back that process. Our elite pursued in vigor that shrinking processes of that local space and community governance at that level, except with few exceptions in certain places. And so this is a long process that has certain historical roots dating back to colonialism, to post-colonialism. And so we have a space that is shrunk. So the State Independent Electoral Commission are, in essence, even if you have the right caliber of people, you have a debt, a decay at that level. And you have people, observing certain empathy, non-participatory empathy at the local government level, because that space is shrunk. It does not exist. So if we are to revitalize our society, we must go back to the local government space to give minority participation. Minority voice will be strong at the local government level. Yes.
All right, Prof. Kabir Issa, thank you indeed. You've put a very a crucial point here, one of which is the lack of community governance, which you rightly pointed out, which has also led to ungoverned areas, which have now been taken over by bandits and kidnappers across the country. Because, of course, if you have functional local government governance in Nigeria, of course, those ungoverned areas wouldn't have been the way it is today. Thank you indeed. We shall get back to you in the course of the conversation. Now, let's return to Abuja studio, where we have Safia Bichi Akuson, Head Knowledge Management and Learning, IAGA Africa. Safia, what's your take on this alleged abysmal performance of state independent electoral commissions in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you so much. Barrister Uzi mentioned that the selection processes for the commissioners at the State Independent Electoral Commission is similar to that of the INEC. But again, where they differ is the fact that the National Assembly has enjoys some level of financial autonomy as compared to the state assemblies. So again, the state assemblies are dependent of the governor. So whoever the governors or governor present as candidates or members of the commissions will, of course, will enjoy that sympathy from the state electoral, from the state assemblies. Again, if you look at the fact that the state assembly, we talked about the caliber of people, that is their experiences and whatever. But if they have political affiliation, this could lead to some kind of sympathy when it comes to conducting and managing elections. And consistently, we've seen that. And the fact that we don't mention that local government elections are being won not just by chairmen, but by councillors across board. It's something we need to put, is a statistic we need to put out there so that people understand the gravity of this of this lack of independence that we experience or we see in the State Electoral Commission. For instance, there was a state, I can't remember the state, that about 222 commissioner seats, constituency seats were won in a landslide by political parties. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is the fact that the people managing the State Independent Electoral Commission are affiliated to political parties can lead to the kind of elections or the lack of transparency we're seeing at the state elections. Then we also need to go back to the state assemblies. The state assemblies are supposed to be the legal body managing and enforcing some of these laws. There are some states, the professor from Kaduna just mentioned the fact that elections were not run within a period of 3 to 5 years, in one of the across board. And why is it so? Elections are supposed to be consistent in a democratic settings. That's why for general elections, we have them within the space of 4 years, but this is not so in the case of local government elections. Local government elections these days are only conducted when it's close to national elections, and this is because we know that the governors, as clearly stated, wants to enjoy that power and that control at the local government levels. So I think we need to revert back to the legal framework I know that there are opinions on going back on taking away the management of local government elections from SEC to INEC. And of course, the issues around INEC need to be unbundled is coming up the table. We're saying that INEC should be unbundled. Why are we adding the responsibilities to INEC? But again, if we're going to take away the responsibility of managing political parties, take away responsibility of managing electoral offenses, then we can also look into that direction. It's very bad and sad to see that across 36 states, local government elections are not competitive, and political parties nowadays, in the last 4 years, last 5 years actually, are beginning to boycott elections. So, and this is very, very sad, and this is not good to our democracy, and most especially for young people, because for young people to be part of elections and to be part of the to participate in the electoral processes, they need to start from the local level. So local elections are supposed to be like a training ground for young people. And if we continue in this manner, we're going to exempt young people as well as even women, young women that have interest in political governance.
Thank you very much, Sophia, for the points you have raised. In particular, you've also touched on the missed opportunity from participation in governance through local government elections or local council elections efficiently organized by the State Independent Electoral Commissions. We probably will have time to return to those missed opportunities and what, of course, can be done in the current circumstance. We try to get back to Professor Sheka, who is the chairman of the Kano State Independent Electoral Commission. He was with us. All right, he's back there on the screen. Professor Sheka, of course, we lost you at some point while you were just trying to gain altitude in your initial comments on this subject matter. I will give you the opportunity again now to restate your points and add some more.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, the points I wanted to raise have been mentioned by the barrister and we just concluded where maybe I have mentioned the issue about this independence. I was about to make a point with regards to the constitutional provision. Yes, the appointment process looks similar, the appointment into the office of tax and that of INEC. But like the lady who just, Sapia, mentioned, the problem lies in funding. You know, INEC received their funding directly from the National Assembly, so they spend their budget as they are given the money. But, you know, states are actually the pockets of the excellencies because, you know, you make the budget, you commit, it's going to be, the money is released at the discretion of His Excellency. So if certainly states are to perform credibly, I think there should be, that independence should, you know, be emphasized, that at least maybe the funding should come from first charge. Maybe revenue going to the central government, maybe 1-2% should go to the funding of CX, so that when election comes, they don't even have to go to the governor or anybody to say, you know, the money is coming, just like emirate councils are being given money, or like other institutions are just given first charge from revenue accruing to the state. If that will be done, at least there will be a little bit more autonomy. So this autonomy is what matters. It certainly you have to depend on the state government to give you the money, of course, and then to organize the election until the administration of His Excellency when he wish to stick to the time, even though he proposed that they postpone or even sometimes even cancel everything. So I think that would be one of the fundamental issues, like you rightly pointed out. And again, the issue of the appointment. Some are just appointed probably to settle the democratic kind of contribution made to either the state governor or something, because some are totally not qualified, lack any experience to participate in conducting election, but you know, they are appointed and just have to manage them and work with them. In fact, to the extent that they don't even know what to do. Yeah. And again, certainly the level of involvement or interference differs from one state to another. And I think if we are to really perform, our functions the way it's supposed to be performed, then we have to also introduce some sort of technology. Case study of Kaduna, when they had their 2018 election, they used voting machines and extent to which the election results get manipulated. And I think probably that is why over 5 local governments have entered the opposition party instead of the ruling party, everything. So I think if that can also be emphasized, we can be able to perform creditably during our election. But like again, like Mr. Kia mentioned, issue of voter appetite. We just have recently come back from Oyo. We have seen the turnout of people to the voting points. Certainly, boycotts of election is what causes all these things. Because of lack of confidence, we keep emphasizing the voter education, the one that the election will be fair, we are ready to conduct, but people don't trust us. Sincerely speaking, at the end of the day, the major party that is supposed to partake and win some positions, they just announced boycotting, so on and so forth. And then what will be left is the major ruling party and then some small parties that most of them do not even have enough offices in some of the local government areas. And that is the reason why after conducting the election, you find that almost all the seats have been cleared because major parties that are having the strength to win some positions have withdrawn from the election. So I think if the parties should be sorting some of the steps, because actually a lot of us are determined to conduct free and fair election, and we were given the mandate. Our government made us to swear with a holy book that we are going to conduct free election, and they kept telling us to conduct free and fair election. But unfortunately, the opposition parties do not accept, do not believe in all this. So mostly they withdraw from the election, and there's nothing you can do. If a ruling party, a major party is contesting with very small, less competitive party, certainly the result is going to turn out the way it is turning out.
All right. Thank you indeed, Professor Sheka. Let's return here to our Abuja studios, where we still have Ezenwawagu. Ezenwawagu, you are an advocate of electoral reform. Is it a possibility now that the National Assembly is trying to perhaps carry out some is it reform now or trying to revisit the constitution of the country to see how some acts can be amended? Is it a possibility to also amend the Electoral Act establishing state electoral commissions to be reformed in such a way that the governors will not have that absolute control of the commission? Perhaps for us to begin to have credible elections at the state level.
Well, I think from what is on the plate right now, it's clear that what happens is an ambush. It's not necessarily is an ambush by the governors in terms of their engagement with that platform. If you follow the process of appointment and you have a proper state assembly that will vet, interrogate, profile, and then come out with that, so structurally you don't actually have so much problem. And I think our attitude always is to say, once we have a problem, then let's go to law. Let's go to the law. But the law doesn't seem as if the law is essentially the problem. And I started from the point of investment. What kind of investment are we making into subnational governance and elections? If you are going to have the 2023 elections, you are going to have donor partners, civil society, the media, all of us are on INEC. We want to ensure that they do the right thing. But when it's local government election, we hardly are interested. I remember us putting up a situation room for one of the states in the South. And the resident electoral commissioner, a very respectable person like Barrister Uzi said, who had worked in INEC, came out and said, hey, if you want to get the details of the results, go, just apply. He announced that this political party has won everything. And there was no challenge, not by elites, not by the media, not by civil society people in that state. And this happens, the conspiracy of the political parties, not in terms of one, even there's no differentness. Political party is supposed to be, you are supposed to see some differentness. One party, doing the right thing and perhaps the other not doing. And then you can say on the basis of that, I want to support this political party. But their together in ensuring that where they are dominant, they take everything. So we are not investing enough. That for me.
Why the indifference?
It has, first and foremost, like I said, it has everything to do with engaging that which is far away. For one, a lot of people, security, if you challenge them, they know your father, they know your mother, they can come after you. So it's better to talk about somebody who is very, very far away.
In journalism, that's called Afghanistanism.
Afghanistanism. So whatever it is, we've studied this, but I think that even the INEC that we perhaps now want them to go and handle, we remember that there was a time this same INEC was in a situation in which people will be going for elections, people will be casting their votes, and results will be announced. What kind of investment do we put into INEC to get it to the point where it is now fashionable to say it should now take over every election in the context of devolution of powers? I think what we need to do is to begin to think, resource more in terms of what kind of investments, attitudinal investments do we need to make even as a people in terms of local governance. Like I keep saying, go to every local government. There is a budget. The local governments have a budget. They do budgets every year. But none of us, whether as elites, as ordinary people, have ever, whether through Freedom of Information Act or anything, to say, can I see the budget of this local government? We have a general lack of interest in engaging. And so the call for me, rather than just, it's important that there are things that can be done within the law in terms of the quality of people who are appointed. You can talk about the kind of investment that we have seen in INEC, where you have almost, people who have contributed, change agents were brought into INEC. Whether we have seen a qualitative leap in terms of that investment, time will tell that. But we can begin to restructure and say, who gets into the SEC? What kind of people? Do we have representatives of the media? Do we have representatives of the professional bodies? Do we have representatives of the legal, MBA and the rest of them appointed as members of SEC? So that there can also be representation, the issue of representation. So if you are from MBA, for instance, and you conduct this kind of dismal election that we are talking about, the MBA can sanction. The media can sanction. Different people can sanction.
Exactly. That's why I was talking about amendment of the law to reflect what you have just said, so that we may have independent body that will be responsible for
the point I've made is that I agree that there could be. I'm making the point about investment. What are we putting in? See, I think that over time I've come to the conclusion that even if you run the laws that we have today effectively, if you use them effectively, we will get better results. So the challenge for me has not always been about whether you change the. So even if you change it and.
I'm sorry to leap in here. The other guests, of course, are waiting. But the question that my colleague Kirian is pursuing has to do with the proposition you're making now.
Yes.
To say, let the appointing authority be under a mandate to appoint commissioners into SEC from identified or identifiable categories.
Yes.
But if there's no legal requirement for that, if it is left to the discretion of the state chief executive, the state chief executive might exercise his discretion otherwise.
So the point, therefore, is why do you want to take out the states? Because the same problem you have is also with the federal. The federal is not appointing commissioners from these identified bodies. So if there is going to be a law, that law has to deal with, first and foremost, not just the State Independent Electoral Commission. You need to talk about the financial independence of INEC and therefore the financial independence of the State Independent Electoral Commission. So that is important, where their money is given to them directly. We are proposing, for instance, at the level of Yaga, we are proposing 180 days that they should receive their monies. So you can extrapolate that into SEC as well, that they have independent direct funding for elections. And then if you are also dealing with the appointment of national commissioners and even the chairman in a way that it is clear that there are identifiable representative entities that come into the commission, rather than this attitude of, the president appoints the national commissioners and then they go to the National Assembly. It's the same thing in the state. But what has happened is that all of us are paying attention. If somebody is appointed, there's a woman who has been appointed, who was sent to the National Assembly as national commissioner. It is our interest that has stopped that appointment from coming on, because all over the country, people said, oh no, this person has been identified with a political party and you therefore don't need to. So that has held it down. But when that happens in the state, we are not aware. We don't even know. We don't care. We don't ask.
Ezenwa, thanks a lot. Let's bring in again Osazelzi. Tell us, I mean, we have seen, there's no question about it, I believe, a progression in the performance of INEC. I mean, over the years, from one election cycle to the other, and as Ezenwa has pointed out, the attention paid to INEC isn't what you find at the state level. What are those things, for instance, that state independent electoral commissions can learn from INEC?
Well, thank you very much. Part of it, as Professor Nkaduna said, is historical. We really have to go back and trace the history of the things and see how do we get to where we are. There was, first of all, on part of INEC, there was a deep-seated commitment to be relevant, to be change agents, and to ensure that we keep improving on each, with each cycle. That, look, if people are dissatisfied, we've done our best, people are dissatisfied, are there things we can do differently? Are there things we can do to enhance confidence of the people? I think the word came up earlier. It has a lot to do with the confidence of the people in the institution. Not just INEC, but I think there's a trust deficit in a lot of our institutions vis-a-vis the perception of the people. And we must try and address that. Coming with INEC, there was a lot of engagement with civil society and stakeholders. These are our plans, this is what we try to do, this is what we're trying to do, this is where we want to get to, and things like that. Sometimes they are well received, sometimes they're not too well received, but I think that interaction has helped a great deal. We take, the Commission used to take its reports, especially from civil society, very, very seriously. And with the new blood coming into the Commission, so look, we don't want to do the things as, we'll try to do things differently so that to improve on where we're coming from. I think that is there. There must be that commitment amongst the CX. It brings to the issue of maybe INEC should take over. Let me give you an anecdote. A couple of years ago, there was a 7th senator who had a petition for recall. And he was very vehement and very, very angry with INEC. INEC was biased, INEC was this, INEC was that. But the next day, there was a debate and there's constitutional reform. And he said, look, scrap CX and give their functions and powers to INEC. So there's that paradox that most of our political elites tend to get into. The people who want federalism, true federalism, want fiscal federalism, but they want the same INEC to conduct local government elections. I mean, the irony is not lost on them. You know, it's the same people clamoring for true federalism that are asking that INEC should conduct local government elections. And I think it was made, Sophia made the point earlier on, I think in 1979, the constitution is still the same. 1979, FEDECO conducted all elections, although the constitution of 1979 said that it's actually first established CX. In 1963, each region chose whatever method it decided to, because there was really true federalism at that stage. So you had the elected governments in local level in the west, followed by the east, and not so much so in the north, because in the north, local government administration was handled by the emirs, generally speaking. So taking all these things, now we've gone to a stage where, look, democracy must start from the very basics, from the grassroots. There must be more interest in what is happening there. CX, part of the problem with the CX is that when the new governor comes, the new government, he dissolves the CX or stops funding them. And I think the chairman of Kano CX made a very good point there. Look, there must be financial independence, but it's not just financial independence. If you give some of those CX 10 times their budget and give it to them well before elections, I doubt if the results will be the same. People forget, in this debate, let's not forget that INEC conducts elections in the FCT as well, area council, which is local government elections in the FCT. We don't have the same kind of controversy. Mind you, the turnout is not as high as it is in national elections, So that is another point that we'll go back to Ezenwa's propositions. We should take more interest in these things.
No, but how does INEC get it right with the FCT? I mean, we've seen the council elections in the FCT. Turnout might be low, but we don't have the same kind of issues that we hear about with CX.
Probably interest of the major political parties, interest of the powers that be. INEC conducted in 1999 local government elections, because they were not based. The 1999 Constitution came into effect in May 29. The transitional provisions were taken care of by decrees. And that decree, I think 17 of 1999, gave INEC the power. So for each local government, for presidency, for National Assembly, they had a decree for each, transitional decree for each one. And INEC conducted elections. And if you go back to that and you see the political map of Nigeria, starting from the local government elections, it makes a very interesting read with what has happened in the next 20, 22 years subsequently. I think the powers of the governors to dissolve commissions or not to recognize them, we have to look at that if at all there's going to be electoral reform. These are the kind of reforms we should be looking at. Do they have powers? Well, Supreme Court said, look, the Constitution recognizes governance, democratic governance, as the basis of governance in local governments. And we've ruled severally that you cannot dissolve these statutory bodies that have fixed tenures. You cannot, just because you didn't like your new party has taken over. And I think Ezra made that point is very clear. Whether it's ABGA, every party that's controlled a state, ABGA, PPA, PDP, AMPP, APP, or APC, the trend is still the same. So obviously it's not an ideological thing, it's to do with the political class. There must be a commitment, both from those, the politicians and political class themselves, and the CX, that look, it's not because you appointed me, I am beholden to you, I should be beholden to the Constitution. We don't seem to have that presently.
But how do you, Kieran, I mean, it's a conundrum, as it were, because you were talking about Professor Sheka Vazum Kano was talking about the caliber of certain persons who get appointed into commissions. I mean, if these persons see it as a bread and butter issue, then how can you stand up and say, as Sazel is saying, look, I'm beholden to the Constitution, not to my appointer. But that's one of the ways that we can actually get out of this.
What has been noted over time and over the years with respect to local government, state independent electoral commission is the fact that you cannot be the chairman of a state independent electoral commission without having sympathy for the ruling party. It is very clear. And that is why, of course, when elections are conducted in states, you see the landslide victory of the ruling party. That has always been there for years now. And it's not contestable whether it is true or not, because that is what we are seeing. The result is very clear. All right, so let's return to Kaduna, where we have Professor Mohammed Kabir. You actually raised many points, in your opening remarks. Of course, you were so historical, and you traced the problem from the outset, from the real beginning of local government governance in Nigeria. Of course, you noted that we started with local government before the state government in this country, and we got it right at a point. Now, people are suggesting whether it is possible for us to have an independent body established by law to oversee the appointment of a chairman of state independent electoral commission and commissioners that will serve in the CX. Is it a possibility to do that, to actually see how we can close the gap, because you also raise the issue of lack of community governance in the country, which of course is the reason why we are here this morning discussing the issue of trying to overhaul state independent electoral commission.
Well, thank you, Kirian. My view first is that I am a federalist. I believe in the principles of federalism and as enshrined in our Constitution. And I believe that at that level, power should be devolved to the State Independent Electoral Commission. However, just like Chief Unwagu, Chairman Unwagu delineated, I believe that when you talk about community engagement, I believe that there should be a very strong civil society presence at the local government level and at the community level. So the process, like he outlined, We should begin to allow, the current constitutional reform should begin to allow at that level some degree of civil society participation at the federal level and at the state level. In other words, the governor should not be given the absolute power of appointment. And there should be caveat in our constitution that any tenure appointment should not be dissolved until after the expiration of the period of the tenure of that appointment. And so if we put in this in place, then we can have the kind of structure we want. And I believe with Chief Nwagu, it's not so much about law, it's about the people. You know, like I said earlier, we have spent so much time under military rule, and so we have not produced democrat. We are in a democratic period of, presence of, we are in a framework of democratic practice. However, Nigerians are yet to be democrat. And that's just the major problem. So what we need to do is to do a reacculturization, a reorientation of the mindset of the people. Remember in China, when there was the 1945 revolution, what they started with was a cultural revolution. First, change the mindset of the people. First, tinker with the way people think. Then we can now begin to move in the direction we want. And so we need to do a lot of tinkering with the mindset of people, both the top ruling elite, the dominant elite, and the followership, mass followership of people. You find Nigerians are heavily, highly divided. Even if you come on the same religious platform, you find Nigerians are divided on every basis, even on clan basis. Even if you give independence like Somalia, Nigerians will still be divided. So we need to change mindset. We need to tinker with the way people think. And so we need to have more of civil society engagement. It's not so much about the problem of the law. The framework is there. Now, I also want to emphasize, Decree 36, 1998, set out everything clear. But our politicians will want to forget that Decree 36 exists. And you cannot wish away Decree 36, because Decree 36 gave life to 1999 Constitution. And in that decree, every aspect, that the local government autonomy was mentioned, the executive power of a chairman, the tenure of a chairman, how you fund the local government, everything was mentioned. But when state assemblies are to make law, they forget Decree 36, as if Decree 36 did not give birth to the 1999 Constitution. It was Decree 36 that elected the government in power that started running the 1999 Constitution. And in that, the decree also spells out the role of elections and how elections should be conducted. So we need to go back into the basics and look at what is obtainable and practice exactly what is called democracy. What we have is civilian administration, not civil rule. And we don't have civil people with democratic credentials. People behave like authoritarian autocrats in a democratic enterprise. And so we need to change mindset. We need to get people to change mindset. We need to get people to behave like Democrats and people with democratic credentials, you know, with understanding of what is democratic culture and values. So we have a system, we don't uphold the values at every level, even at the national level. You find people behaving as if they are law unto themselves. And so this mindset must change. For example, at all levels, we represent the people. The people are supreme. It's not the constitution that is supreme in Nigeria. It's the people. But the people are often not taken or factored into representation. When you are in National Assembly, you are in State House of Assembly or local government council, you represent the people. But this is not in the front burner of people's democratic action. So civil society must engage the process. And the civil society presence is at the national level. I'm sorry, Yaga is here. But funding comes from abroad. And that's the problem. And those who fund from abroad do not look at the lower levels, do not want to worry about what is obtainable at the lower level. So civil society must come to the lower level, engage the process at the lower level, because we now have a not too young grown law. And the local government was established from 1976 as a training ground for politics, for the young. So we should run the local government as a training ground. And it's supposed to be a system of communication. The local government is supposed to be a means of communication between the local government and the state, the local government and the federal government. And so the young can also participate. But the political parties don't allow the young operate because money culture has been infused into the process, not principles, not process, not political process is devoid of ideology, devoid of principle,
Well,
of money. So
Professor,
civil society must also change that culture, fight that culture of money, change that culture.
Professor Issa, thank you very much there for your very elaborate points. We're going to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. You're welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to Professor Sheka with us via Zoom from Kano, where he is the chairman of that state's Independent Electoral Commission. Professor Sheka, of course, there are a number of proposals right on the table, including, of course, greater advocacy by interest groups at the subnational level, by placing more scrutiny on that tier of government and the kind of elections that are conducted therein. There's also the proposal that's been made with regard to financial autonomy, making funding a first-line charge for the state independent electoral commissions. There's also another point that has been raised, and you also touched on that briefly earlier on, with regard to the appointment of not just the chairman, but also the commissioners who conduct the elections, that's to say the CX. Tell us something. What is the experience now? The governor, of course, has the power to appoint and then ratified by the State House of Assembly. Does the governor also have power unilaterally to dissolve a SIEC? That's to say that, say, look, now those of you who are there now, you are disbanded, everybody go home. Or if there is if your position is tenured, then of course removal will be dependent on concurrence by the State House of Assembly. How, therefore, do we strengthen the appointment and removal of members of the State Independent Electoral Commissions, including the chair?
Well, actually, the appointments are actually made by the governor after submitting the list to the State Assembly. And like you said, the tenure is 5 years. And, the state is not supposed to be dropped onto the expiration of the 5 years. There are cases where some were dissolved, and I think there are court cases. So the composition, partly like concur with the most of the panelists have said, there should be expanded. I read the alarm that some of the members that are appointed don't have any experience about elections, but probably to settle some political kind of sort of maybe compensation also. There are those people there, and they contribute nothing. But if it can be expanded to include some legal practitioners, of course, some chairmen, baristas, and then some media men as well as civil society organizations, some of them to participate in it. I think that will have the credibility of our elections. And I think the most important thing that we need to emphasize that even INEC was not even performing well before they got financial independence. This financial independence is very important. It's more or less like he who pays the piper, the television. If almost every time you're conducting election, you have to go to the government house almost every day, feeding and almost frustrating to get funded. Certainly, I don't think there would be anything credible there. But if, like, as of recommending, that the funds can come from first charge, the State Electoral Commission are not have to go to anybody when conducting the election. I think that will help. And again, there is another major issue. I think when you do this constitutional review, there is need to harmonize the tenure. Some states, after election, the tenure is 3 years, some 3 years, and I think there is a state where the tenure is only 1 year. I think that is even a waste of resources. If it can be harmonized constitutionally, that what local government chairman are elected, they must stay 3 years or 2 years, or as a case. I think that will be better. And of course, again, well being qualified, and then there's lack of training. I think with the exception of some few states, including Kano, we are sponsored to travel abroad for training, like Yobe and other states. Most of the states depend on International Foundation for Electoral System, IFES, and the European Center for Electoral Support. These are the institutions that are giving us regular training in Nigeria. Almost every quarter or every year we have an activity with them. But certainly, due to the dynamic nature of electoral processes in the world, there is need for regular training. So, well, certainly, I am happy the discussions almost unanimously believe sex are important, and it may not augur well if the responsibility of sex, maybe sex are scrubbed and then transferred to INEC, because the same Nigerians are in INEC, and the only difference is that INEC relatively remove financially independent and sex, and if the sex should be independent financially, certainly you will see a lot of performance. And of course, I'm also happy that you said there was a reflection. I know in Kano 2007, election was held and so many opposition parties won seats. And like I also mentioned, 2018 election in Kaduna, so many parties won seats. And like the election we just had in Kano, we conducted it almost together with civil society organizations. We brought them in order to help us reduce the imperfections. And we have seen a lot of improvements. So sincerely speaking, if the composition of the leadership could be a little bit broadened to include more bodies that will make it more difficult to embark on any malpractice, that would be good. And again, I also mentioned that point of maybe introducing some form of technology. What helps Kaduna to be a little bit more fair than other things? The issue of that voting machine. So if there can be introduction of this technological development that will make rigging of election a bit difficult, then we will see again much more credible election. Thank you.
All right, that's Professor, well, rather Chairman, Kano State Independent Electoral Commission, Professor Garba Ibrahim Sheka. There, of course, we don't have much time. Otherwise, we would have actually asked you some direct questions with respect to what is currently obtainable in Kano State, where you are the chair of SEC. Well, if time allows that, we might return to you for that clarification. We want to understand what you are doing practically, presently in Kano State with respect to your chairmanship of that commission. All right, now let's get back here and talk to Safia Bichi. Safia, both you and Professor Kabir Issa talked about local government being a political training ground for young politicians. This is where people grow from, understanding governance at the grassroots level before you actually perhaps seek for a position of authority at the state level. And you also agreed to the fact that civil society organization should play a key role in this connection. But what has played out over the years is the fact that in most states, opposition parties do not even participate in council elections because of obvious reasons that we know. Now, what is the role of YAGA, your organization, with respect to sensitizing young politicians or sensitizing even those in power at state level to understand the concept of council election and why they should take it more seriously?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think last Saturday was the Oyo State local government elections, and we happened to be there. And one of the reasons why we were there is to raise awareness and also the consciousness of both civil society organizations, citizens in the state, as well as media. I would like to mention that it was so sad to see that even at the state, some civil society organizations and even media were we're surprised to see that Yaga left Abuja to engage the process at the local government level. And this is very important. Again, and there was lack of information or awareness. Citizens didn't even know that elections was going to hold in a few days' time. It was less than a week when we were in the state. And from the part of the political parties, like Mr. Izewa mentioned, as well as Barrister Uzi, because of the fact that they also know that whenever they empower, they also have the opportunity to take the entire elections in the state to allocate score for themselves. This also brings about the kind of reluctant, the attitude we're seeing from the political parties. But just to mention, I think probably if we have SEC invest in, that's the state government invest in building structures around the state. For instance, if you go around all the local governments for instance, let's say Nasarawa State that is close back to Abuja, you find out that there's hardly a time you see local government offices of SEC in that state. However, it's a bit different when it comes to INEC. INEC, in every local government in Nigeria, there's an INEC office, and the citizens in that local government have the ability to interface with INEC. And we know that apart from elections, citizens interface with INEC during voter registration and others. But it's different when it comes to the SEC. SEC is only when they're organizing local government election, which is not consistent. And again, while talking about amending the legal framework, I think we should also look at the electoral laws within the state, because some of the laws at the state level do not guarantee the participation of young people, for instance. So Lagos State, someone called a few months ago to say, oh, I want to participate in the upcoming local government elections, but they said I can't participate because I don't fall within the age limit for running for either councillorship or chairmanship at the local government level. And they made reference to the age reduction bill that was signed into law in a few years back. But again, we told them that this is, every state has the power to make laws that governs the administration of local government elections. So I think we need to go back to even the electoral laws that governs elections at the local government elections, as well as to ensure that we guarantee participation and also have some strong framework. Then talking about civil society, I think civil society have a lot to do, but it's beyond civil society. How many civil society do we have that works within the state? We know that some funding is a challenge when it comes to the operations of civil society within the state level. I think the media needs to play a bigger role in terms of exposing and also amplifying some of this happening, so that citizens, both in the state and outside the state, will see this as an urgent call for them to start engaging the processes at the local government. Again, I think one of the reasons why local government election is not that palatable to people is the fact that is the lack of local government financial autonomy. If in most states, the governors control the finances of the local government. So, for instance, it's not surprising, or it's a fact that in some states, even local government staff salary are prepared at the state level. So the chairman actually has, what he controls is usually the little revenue that comes at the local government level. And we have states where tax holidays are being guaranteed in some of these levels. So what they have to control is their usual security vote. So people don't see the reason to why they should contest for election. And it happens that people think being a local government chairman is not a serious position for some respectable people in the society. So I think we need to look at that. The financial autonomy of local government will enable and will at least address some of these issues, because I'm sorry to say, but we know that where there's control, people like control. Where there's control, there's also it draws attention of citizens as well as some other people. Like Mr. Israel mentioned, people are not even aware that local government has budgets. And where is the local government budget? What are we doing in terms of engaging the budget of the local government?
Sophia, thank you very much. We're getting pressed for time. 2 points that you made, one relating to the presence of the state independent electoral commissions in the particular state itself. It is unthinkable to imagine that INEC would not have offices in all the states of the Federation, as well as the Federal Capital Territory. I don't know what the situation is with regard to CX, whether CX have operational offices in all the local government areas of their state, or perhaps they are just in one little accommodation that is unkempt because they don't have funding to take care of it, and then when election time comes, everybody scrambles to recruit whoever you want to recruit.
Ad hoc offices
Ad hoc,
during elections.
absolutely. So
Areas.
does a state independent electoral commission have offices in the local governments of that state, so that as you want to bring it?
Yes.
Very, very quickly before another point.
The reality on the ground is that from everywhere we have traveled, where they are conducting council elections, people come from the state capital. There is no presence, but it has more to do with the challenge that I posed earlier, and I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about this thing about the local government being a training ground. It's also part of the problem. You have vice chancellors finishing as vice chancellors, and they come to teach. There is no reason why a governor can't go and contest for what do you call it?
There was a deputy governor somewhere.
Yes,
some time ago.
So why I'm saying that, why the point that I'm making is that, you see, this exclusionary tactics is unhelpful. Young people, if they want to contest for governorship, they should do so, and not quarantine them into one local government.
Let me make a point here. As a political scientist, right? If you study local government, if you do have any lecture on local government, we have councillors, and you can't live in the city and be a councillor. Councillors live within the area.
Chairman that lives in his local government.
No, because
today,
in Nigerian context, they don't want to live there.
Except it's an
They don't want to live there.
local government.
They don't want to live there. But what is required
Because
is that
the local government
live.
chairman is coming. He will come on Thursday, he will come on Tuesday, and leave on Thursday.
That is because of the peculiarity of Nigerian situation. That's what we're talking about. That's why we are failed in terms of local government, local government governance.
Yes.
What we're saying, why it is a training ground, is the fact that those who are amateurs, who are starting
The
off
political
life
parties are the
politically,
training grounds. The political parties, if they function as political parties, it is the real training ground. The AG, the NCNC used to have a school of ideology where they took their cadres to be trained. That is why you can have Bola Ige become the National Public Secretary of Action Group at 29.
Okay, you know what?
That's the problem we have.
Thanks. Kirian, just one point. Sefia, before I bring in Usazeuzi, you were saying that people don't want to be chairman or so of a local government. How do you respond to this? Because there's one musician that sang one song, I don't know the name of the musician, says, I want to be something chairman, I want to be chairman. Have you heard that song? Maybe so, I don't know. It's an up chair, so I don't know whether it's that what you're talking about. But Usazeuzi, one point here. Again, in terms of the attitude that everyone talked about, political parties don't seem to realize that part of the fourth alteration to the Constitution is their survival through winning elections. And then winning local council elections could actually give them a lifeline. And we have seen how parties have been deregistered in recent times. How do we bring this into their consciousness so that they recognize that that is actually a good hunting ground for them to survive and thrive?
Well, as far as I'm aware, all the parties have legal advisors. They have all categories of staff who should be following these trends, they should be self-enlightened, quite honestly. And but INEC has also gone out of its own way to try and, in these engagements, inform them about this, even with the registration. And rather than taking a good faith and look at the law as amended, the Constitution as amended, they went about going into the legal battlefield. And sadly, for them, it seems that they lost the battle. But that is a wake-up call for those who are still there and for those who are proposing to get registered. There's new associations wishing to transform to political parties.
Well, I think the matter here is the fact that the formation of our political parties, they are not founded on a particular philosophy. People just group themselves, come together, of course, and call themselves a name and start running a political party. As far as the understanding of council governance is concerned globally, it is it's actually a foundation level of politics. is the foundation level of politics. And until that is done in Nigeria, we will still continue to, run political parties. We were running political parties, run elections. We were running elections in the country without really getting to maturing to a level where we can say, look, we have arrived politically. That's why we're still a nascent democracy after nearly 30 years of practicing good governance.
We understand.
Well, at this point, we are going to close this conversation for today. Well, thank you for really being part of it. But before we do that, let's appreciate all our guests who have made it possible for us to, of course, do justice to this very topic. Oluwole Osaze Uzi, former Director, Publicity and Voter Education of INEC. Thank you, sir, for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Ezenwa Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform and Convener, Say No Campaign, Nigeria. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. And of course, Safia Bichi Akosun, Head, Knowledge Management and Learning, IAGA Africa. Thank you. And of course, a Professor of Governance, Department of Local Government and Development Studies, Faculty of Administration, Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa. Thank you also for sharing your thoughts with us on the program. And the Chairman, Kano State Independent Electoral Commission, Professor Garba Ibrahim Sheka. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning, sir.
All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. And Kieran, just while we're signing off, if state independent electoral commissions can't have offices in all their local government areas, they could begin by having offices in at least one senatorial district in their state. So that's it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. You take care of yourself. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Have a great day.